teach in Pakistan. He went to Pakistan close to 9/11, and in Pakistan after 9/11, all the people of the madrasas close to the area where he was were arrested. He was detained in Bagram in Afghanistan, which now is pretty famous because of al-Baghdadi, and then he was transferred to Guantanamo Bay. He's still in, and is one of the people ready to be transferred, but we don't know until now where. And the third story, just want to say the story because I think it's really the core of the book, is the story of Salman al-Rayeh. Salman was the younger brother of a group of 3 brothers. The older one, Fawaz. Fawaz was a real Al-Qaeda guy. He went to Pakistan and then to Germany before 9/11. He told the family that he was trading clothes, so he has a very nice business, and he sent home a lot of money. And the father was surprised. He said, from where is coming all this money? But his fault was he's never investigated very much at the beginning because the money were fine for the family. But at one point, he started to have doubts, and he sent the younger brother, Salman, to Pakistan to meet the older one, Fawaz. And what happened, that this journey happened during the time after 9/11. And so Fawaz never was in Guantanamo, but Salman was arrested and transferred to Guantanamo, even though he didn't know what the older brother was doing. And in this story, the hero of the story is the sister, Amina. Amina, she got divorced. She suffered from isolation. She gave birth to a girl while she was in this situation, divorced, and with no support of her husband, because all the family was isolated, of course, after came the news that this guy was arrested and he was in Guantanamo. And, but she was the first relative of Yemeni Guantanamo detainees who was looking strongly for a local lawyer. She found this guy, and Mohammed Allawi, who established the first corporation of lawyers in Yemen, were ready to defend the Yemeni people detained in Guantanamo Bay.
Do you want to see the?
Let's see. We can show the video if we can. Okay. Okay, that's the trailer of the ebook. The original footage is the footage about the family, not the first footage that a lot of people they know here as from another documentary. But just to give you an idea of what happened to the people living in Guantanamo, and how look the letters that I had in my hands. So, I think the story is, is still going on because the family are still waiting. So the families are still waiting.
Can you talk a little bit more, and then we should probably move to questions, but talk a little bit more about the experience of the families, because I think one of the things in the United States that the American press never encounters or never covers is the experience of the families of the men who are in Guantanamo. The person that I was involved in, named Mohammed Uslahi, has a brother who lives in Germany. He's a German citizen. And he had been living in Germany for 10 years without a single American journalist bothering to interview him about the family's experience of his brother in Guantanamo. It's part of this kind of curtain that the Americans draw around Guantanamo in their minds so they don't have to think about the real emotional toll of the place. Tell me a little bit about the perspective of the families, what they hope for now after all this time, knowing that their loved ones will not come back to Yemen. What are they asking for?
Yeah, as I said before, they're simply asking for a trial. They want to know if their relatives, they did something bad or not. The problem is living in all this very long limbo, and for them also is a matter of justice to know if one of their relatives did something wrong. All the people I met, they said, I want to know if my son is responsible for the killing of people in 9/11 and so on, because if he did it, he deserved the death. So basically, they are not, it's interesting, they're not against the death of their relatives. They're against this idea of living in a limbo and the idea of their relatives trapped there because unknown reasons. The second thing is to underline is that they live in limbo too when they are waiting for letters, waiting for drawings, waiting for signs, waiting for Skype calls. During the Obama administration and a little bit before, they had the option to receive Skype calls, one every 6 months. And everybody were very excited the first time to see the relative on the screen and try to understand how it looks like physically. But everybody that told me that they were so stressed and they want to cry, and especially when the Skype call finished, or to see the relatives so thin or looking like, you know, people very sick. And also we need to say that the majority of them did a food strike inside the prison. So actually they're still waiting for Skype calls, but we know that maybe will not be any more Skype calls. They are sure that some letters they will receive some letters again, because it's an issue, it's an important issue, and we know that they need to have some contacts. But still, after they demanded to the U.S. administration to know exactly what were the thing that they do to be in Guantanamo, now they don't have very large hope with the new administration, and they were losing hopes at the end of the Obama administration. Actually, we have, I think, only Al-Karama Foundation and Code Pink in the US. They are still demanding for answers and to understand what's going on with the people in Guantanamo Bay.
Let me ask about that. Your experience as an Italian journalist reporting this story, what is your experience with the American authorities that you tried to contact about this story? What's your perspective on the way they're handling this story, how much access you had to it? And then you mentioned Code Pink. What about contacts with other Americans outside of government, and what has their involvement been in this story?
Yeah, it wasn't simple to contact people who, who are close to the stories of Guantanamo. I have contact with the lawyers, and I have the possibility to talk with somebody who was in the program in Guantanamo Bay as soldier, and now has a very high PTSD distress for the things he or she, depends, he did inside the prison. And authorities, they, in general, with us, with Italians, they talk especially about people where transferred to Italy, like the guy who is detained now in Sardinia. And what I think is really interesting is the reaction of the activists in US. Code Pink is an amazing organization, and I met this woman that became my friend, Terry. And Terry has a sister. She had a sister, and she was killed in 9/11. And Terry realized after 9/11 how much important it is to understand why all this happened. She went in Iraq. She became a great supporter of the Iraqi civil society, and she also went to Yemen, and she protested with the family of the Guantanamo Yemeni detainees in front of the U.S. Embassy, asking for answers to the ambassador. The feeling by her side is that she wants to know the truth too, because she has a relative dead in all this terrorism stuff. So I think she's basically in the same position of the families of the Guantanamo detainees, actually.
Do you want to go for questions?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, good. We would love to answer questions from the audience if you have any. You must have many.
Can you pick up one there?
We have a microphone. 1 second.
Thank you. I would like to know a bit more about, the book. If you really try to put together all the experiences of the families and try to pass the message, or you were documenting the stories of the people, that the relatives of these families that are in Guantanamo, both of them, how the structure of the book really is.
Yeah. Can we pick up a second if we have other questions, and then we go to answer? Feel free also to ask questions to Larry. He has a very great experience.
Okay.
Okay, there's a second one there.
Hi, I was wondering how you managed to find these people, and if the U.S. government ever tried to obstruct you in any way or work against you.
Yeah. The structure of the book is the core are 3 stories of the 3 families I said before, but I met more. I met 6, and just to pick up 3 because I think that those stories summarize in general all the situation I was in, and but there is a huge part of the book is kind of trying to analyze what happened in the time of the Obama administration. So from the first installation of the Guantanamo Bay was X-ray until now. I mean, until Trump was elected, basically, because everything was released in December 2016. There's a part dedicated to prisoners who were transferred to other countries, like in Georgia and Kazakhstan, but I never met them in person. I just contact them. And a part for the lawyers who are still defending these people, because also they face a lot of problems. And there's a part dedicated to 2 soldiers who were in Guantanamo Bay. They served in Guantanamo Bay in a special division, and then they speak out and they said that they have some kind of distress. And so I tried to build all the narrative around the story of the 3 families, trying to give an insight on what's going on, actually. And how I found them, well, I traveled to Yemen since 2012. I lived there 6 months per year. Actually, I'm Yemeni because I married a Yemeni. So I have very strong insight in in the society, and that's the only way you can find these people and try also to understand dynamics. I can say that a lot of Yemeni colleagues, they wanted to tell the story, and I'm very thankful to my fixer, actually is not among us because he was killed by a Saudi strike, Al-Mikdad Mojali. He wanted always to tell the story, but he couldn't because he's a Yemeni. And so we decided to work together as a foreign journalist. He knew that I have the possibility, the option to publish all this, and we did this job together for 1 year. Those people, they never, felt it was, the first problem you need to avoid is that they think you're a spy. Because Yemen is for real a country with a lot of spies. And some of them, they say, are journalists or, so you need to be clear about it. They need to feel that you are not a spy. And then I never met them only once. I stayed with them a lot and talked with all the relatives and try to understand also if they lied to me. Because I can pick all the story for granted. So you need also to see what the CIA says about, for example, Abdul Salam al-Hayla. The brother of Abdul Salam al-Hayla, he told me that his brother was great, but basically he was Al-Qaeda man, a real strong Al-Qaeda man. So the picture of the family about Abdul Salam was, of course, a good guy, but he wasn't. There's another question?
Yeah,
And another one, okay.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering, do you think that this story would have been told if not, because you said you're married to a Yemenis,
yeah.
So of course you have an advantage and you came across these stories. Do you think that if your situation was different, someone else could have written something about them?
To be honest with you, I don't know. I hope so, because I think a journalist, and if you try to be objective, this doesn't depend from your nationality, religion, ethnicity, but this is a country where there are a lot of sensitive issues. So the fact to be quite a Yemeni, and the Yemeni, of course, is a Muslim, create ties, and people are confident with you. So I can say maybe with another Arab journalist who is basically a journalist not belonging to US interest, maybe it will gain the same result.
I would have to, to put in a note from the US side on this too, which is, I think there's the question of the ability of an individual journey to have access, and there's a larger question of whether that journalist has interest in pursuing that story. And from the United States side, stories that had anything to do with the families of Guantanamo prisoners or the lives of prisoners who were released never even made it past the assignment desk in major newspapers. So, and it was very interesting because in the US, a lot of news organizations and in fact human rights NGOs chose to think about these stories in terms of kind of human rights principles, the question of due process, of holding somebody arbitrarily without trial, and not focusing on human stories, because I think Americans had internalized the notion that these were all bad people, actually. There's a very interesting case where Charlie Savage, who's the leading national security advisor, national security reporter for the New York Times, who wrote a great book about the Obama administration's policies on national security, including Guantanamo. About a year and a half ago, said he went to his editors. He said he kind of had this aha moment. He wanted to go and actually meet a prisoner who had been released. Now this is 12 years into Guantanamo. He's written thousands of pages about Guantanamo, but it never even occurred to the New York Times to send its leading reporter to go and meet a prisoner who had been released. And he went to Estonia to meet a Yemeni man who had been relocated to Estonia. And he wrote this incredibly moving piece about how isolated this man was in this country, a tiny country, with an unusual language that he didn't speak. He had no relatives there. And everybody knew who he was. He sticks out like a sore thumb, right? Everybody in the country, we walked on the street and they would point to him. And he's, you know, and Charlie came back from there and he wrote this kind of moving piece about how, you know, how this changed the way he thought about the story. But it says something about the way American press has really treated Guantanamo as a policy question, as a political question, but never as a human question.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Yeah. So I think we need to stop here, to finish here. Thank you for being here. For any further question, just stop us and we will talk with you. And what else? For English readers, the ebook is available also in English online. It's just an ebook, not hard copies. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. I didn't have to answer.
That's perfect. As it should be.
Never investigated very much at the beginning because the money were fine for the family. But at one point, he started to have doubts and he sent the younger brother, Salman, to Pakistan to meet the older one, Fawaz. And what happened, that this journey happened during the time after 9/11. And so Fawaz never was in Guantanamo, but Salman was arrested and transferred to Guantanamo, even though he didn't know what the older brother was doing. And in this story, the hero of the story is the sister, Amina. Amina, she got divorced. She, but we don't know until now where. And the third story, just want to say the story, because I think it's really the core of the book, is the story of Salman al-Raye. Salman was the younger brother of a group of 3 brothers. The older one, Fawaz was a real Al-Qaeda guy. He went to Pakistan and then to Germany before 9/11. He told the family that he was trading clothes, so he has a very nice business, and he sent home a lot of money. And the father was surprised. He said, "From where is coming all this money?" But his fault was he's never teach in Pakistan. He went to Pakistan close to 9/11, and in Pakistan after 9/11, all the people of the madrasas close to the area where he was were arrested. He was detained in Bagram in Afghanistan, which now is pretty famous because of al-Baghdadi, and then he was transferred to Guantanamo Bay. He's still in, and is one of the people ready to be transferred in Guantanamo Bay.
Do you want to see the?
Let's see. We can show the video if we can. Okay. Suffer from isolation. She gave birth to a girl while she was in this situation, divorced and with no support of her husband, because all the family was isolated, of course, after came the news that this guy was arrested and he was in Guantanamo. And, but she was the first relative of Yemeni Guantanamo detainees who was looking strongly for a local lawyer. She found this guy, and Mohammed Alawu, who established the first corporation of lawyers in Yemen, were ready to defend the Yemeni people detained